This meeting is being recorded, and if we could start with attendance of who's here, that would be a great
Yes.
start, because I can't see everyone.
Absolutely. You took the words out of my mouth, Tony. You've definitely had coffee this morning, more than I have. All right.
Actually,
I'm not attached. Oh, it's
Press
green
the
though.
middle of.
Oh, look at that. Oh, see, yeah. I'm not lying when I said I haven't had coffee yet. All right, Tony, who's here? So we've got Malika, we've got Jim, we've got Jeff. Somebody needs to grab Bob Bowers who's walking by. We've got Jeff. Annie Beck is on her way down from the other building. We've got Bruce, we've got Sal, got Adam, Susan, David, Chief, Bob and John. And then we've got Phil on the Zoom and BB on the Zoom.
And David Keith,
Yeah, David's here,
okay,
Annie's here.
it looks to be everybody.
Perfect.
Bill Helm,
Bill and Janet are here along with Kim.
okay, excellent, great. Well, thank you and good morning all. Ashley, you can take off on your agenda, and as I said, we are being recorded, and we'll send this out after the meeting.
Perfect. All right, good morning, everyone. It's great to see everyone. I sent out the agenda the other day. We had a few pre-reads. We're not going to go through them in detail, but do want to give an opportunity for folks to ask any questions if there are any. We sent out the police department study and facility assessment report, which is the final draft. There is no new information in that 86-page document, I think. It was a combination of everything that we have seen thus far. But let me pause there. Were there any questions or comments that committee members had? Okay, and then several questions have been submitted to the email address, and responses have been posted. I do know that there were one or two that were sent in earlier this week. Those responses, I think we can plan on having those posted later today. I saw some emails this morning about them. So we'll get those up before the weekend. Any questions before we launch into the main agenda here? All right, so an update on 0 Newport Road. When we last met, we left with 3 takeaway items that we needed, or that we were looking for some additional information on. One was the wetlands remediation. I put Adam's name on here, but I actually think that Tony might have, Tony or LBA might have a response to the wetlands. Is that right?
Yes, I'll start, and then
Okay.
and then Bob or John can join in. We did in fact do a little bit of research. There's state environmental services group, Department of Environmental Services, DES, does in fact prefer to take checks in, put funds into a resource pot that they can evaluate and better utilize the funds to enhance wetlands, either within this watershed area, within this wetland mapping area, or outside of it as it is most beneficial. Which, for this project, for any project, I think that's kind of a really unique approach. Oftentimes we have to mitigate, replicate 1.5 to 2 times as much as we disturb. It will be an evaluation process. We're checking with Bob, John, and the folks at VHB. They are very familiar with this process. They've worked through it in the past, and Bob can speak more to what project recent experience they may have. But really, as we sit today with a concept and a site that we don't currently own, right? We're not out there really doing the flagging and the surveying, the 25, 50-foot offset, do not disturb areas. We cannot get really granular at this point. It takes biologists physically going out on site with flagging and survey crew and mapping this out specifically so that we know exactly the amount of square footage that we are proposing to disturb, disturbance areas, whether it's a bridge, and we've talked about a lot of different crossing options. Those all need to be evaluated as we get much deeper into design. Bob, I don't know if you want to add anything more to that.
Oh, this side. There we go. Yeah, John and I are working with VHB on a couple other projects in New Hampshire, and those properties, did have, some wetlands, our scope right now doesn't include doing, a wetland scientist. VHB has that in-house. What they did, and correct me if I'm wrong here, John, because we went through iterations with VHB, because we had to move the building a little bit to make it work, was basically interpolate information that was provided to the town by the current owner who did some work back a few years back, 2021, I think, that was shared that showed some wetlands. We don't know if he really hired a wetland scientist, but there was some information there. And then whatever VHB was able to find in the state. So that was interpolated into the final, site plan. I think the last comment I would have is that. So you're right, Tony, that to get to the next step, we have to do a much deeper dive, civil engineering wise. And have VHB or the scientists do something, do a report, do the markation that he talked about that Tony did. And also do more extensive calculations. I think the one thing we did do here as a part of it is not only look at information on the wetlands that's available right now from these various sources, but also really work hard to minimize the disturbance to get the two means in and out of the site that really are absolutely required if we're not going to use it. So that's pretty much it. Thank you, John. That's pretty much it. So I think if you decide to go on that site, Tony's right. We feel the site's a good site. You have to do a deeper dive into stuff and it's the design phase of the project.
Jody, can you remind me, did we leave that line item of the budget blank or did we put in a placeholder?
We do have a placeholder in there for mitigation. We didn't have a kind of ballpark estimate from somebody on what that check would be.
Okay.
So I carried it at mitigation replication at 1.5 times the disturbance.
Okay. Any questions on the wetlands piece for Sarah? Okay. The tower conversation that I believe Chief had with Beltronics.
I didn't. The tower conversation I had with Beltronics was quite a ways in the past because they had already plotted this one on it, and theoretically the plot would work for 0 Newport Road for the time. In terms of the wires, you mean like interference with the tower?
Yeah, because I believe one of those, there are two sets of power lines on that property, and one of them is tension wires. And if my memory serves me correctly, I thought that Beltronics had mentioned that there might be issues with having a tower close to tension wires.
I think that was on a different property.
But we're comfortable with it.
In the area of Hubert's, I think
Yep.
that was on a different piece of property at some point that we had discussed in the past.
Yeah, but we're comfortable with this property in the.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. And then the curb cuttings, I also put Adam down for this, but I believe, Tony, that you actually have a date. So Adam's off the hook today.
Yeah. And he deserves it. Don't throw him under the bus just yet. We'll have plenty of time for that later, so don't go.
That's what I told him.
But the curb cuts, really relate back to the wetland, right? Each of those is a crossing. We've got it in the plan right now. Again, VHB understands and has worked with New Hampshire DOT enough to understand their requirements. We have not fully defined and determined the spacing, the size, the width, the separation between those. What's shown diagrammatically in our concept kind of fits within their parameters. But you as the owner, right, as the authority, while Bob and I can say, geez, we really want 2 means of egress in and out of this site, it's absolutely the preferred way. we all know when push comes to shove and permits and cost and everything else are evaluated, you may say, look, we're gonna have a little bit wider single entrance. We're gonna have public, we're gonna have an emergency lane striped off, whatever it is, you know, but we're not gonna do two different crossings, two different curb cuts. We also talked earlier on about maybe a secondary means of egress out of the back of the site that would eliminate a curb cut, eliminate a wetland crossing. You know, we need to evaluate what that easement or how that would work. So we're just a bit of a ways away from really defining the best, most value conscious alternative there.
Okay, so I think those, sorry.
I also had emailed Eversource to inquire with them about, just rights and, oh, Phil has stand up.
Yes, Phil. Go
Go
for it,
ahead,
Phil.
Phil.
Tony, I thought the other thing that involved DOT was whether there was going to be need for vehicle or pedestrian traffic control, crosswalks, sidewalks,
Yep.
and all the other bells and whistles that tend to show up with these kinds of projects.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's on our list to have those discussions. We're just not there yet.
But should there not be some kind of bookmark on a budget at this point, or?
We can do that. There's a lot of traffic controls out there. That's not to say in that stretch that we wouldn't be adding something or signage or even a control box that, you know, you've got traffic readers now on police, fire vehicles, emergency response vehicles. I don't know if that exists in town or not, whereas they're approaching an intersection, it automatically changes the light. So, you know, people are either out of the intersection or held back from entering the intersection. We just haven't had those discussions yet.
Yeah, we don't have any lights for them to be changed. I do, sorry, I know Chief Cobb was in the middle of the sentence too, but I do agree with Phil that it might be nice to have a placeholder in there for those. I personally like to be a little bit more conservative, and then if we don't need it, great, that's fantastic, but having it in might be beneficial, just so we have it as a line item. Any objection to that from the committee? Go ahead, Chief.
Okay, so the Eversource does allow the use of driveways under their right of way lines with the acceptance of a joint use agreement. And they would also require an easement for that new line that would have to enter the property. They said that they have facilities roadside and a right of way that are the same voltage. What that means is that the customer, we would have to trench through the right of way with a new line to the building. I don't have any idea of cost on that, but just to let the committee know that I did reach out to Eversource just to make that question or ask that question, so that was it.
Great. Okay, that wraps up the outstanding items for 0 Newport Road. Any questions or comments from the committee on 0 Newport? All right, Mr. Helm is going to introduce a new property to us. Get this microphone on.
Okay, there. Okay. So this whole issue of what you all are doing is a dynamic process, and recently, as you probably have heard, certainly seen on the agenda here, a new proposal for a site has come forward from the Garvey family, and we felt that it was interesting enough that you all ought to be given the opportunity to discuss it. And so without any further ado, let's hear from Chief Cobb and Adam what they've learned so far about this. It's because it's a dynamic process, and we're not want to say we can't look at anything more because we've already passed that gate.
Yep. Perfect. Chief, you want to start?
Sure, I heard about this property recently and I hadn't even recalled that we had discussed it on the site selection subcommittee. So we had discussed several dozen properties on that committee. So I went back and I found where we had talked about it in January of 2022. So I guess it didn't surprise me that that was on the list. I didn't remember. There was a lot of properties that we discussed at that time. But at the time, the committee had removed it from the list because the thought was that it was too far outside the main corridor. There were some other comments in the January meeting minutes that the tax map thought it might have been connected with Colby Sawyer at the time. The indication was that it was in, perhaps that indication was that it was in the institutional zone. It might be subject to conservation easement. The owner was unlikely to sell. A stream runs through the property and there are approximately 700 feet of frontage on Seamans Road. So, you know, at the time, the committee had taken it off the list. There were some other properties that rose on the list that have also since been removed. But at this point, I mean, it is a little while later after the committee had already discussed it. And I think it's a property that is worth exploring. Especially if things have changed and the Garvey family is interested in entertaining the idea of selling it to the town for this purpose. We walked it yesterday, Ashley and Adam, we walked along the property and just saw the property itself. I did also ask Beltronics to put this plot of land into their mapping software, and theoretically a tower will work there. It just depends on where the tower might be placed on the property, as to the height of the tower. But that's with any piece of property that we would look at for any police department. So it just depends on what the elevation is and if we can reach both Mount Kearsarge and Mount Sunapee where we have communications equipment. So overall, I think it's definitely worth exploring. The site selection subcommittee had indeed taken it off the list, but I think at this point, some things have changed in terms of the owner being willing to entertain a conversation. So I think it's worth looking at.
And then we have the topic of wetlands. I had Kim, I had your name on here, but I don't know why. Were you taking that, the wetlands, or was Adam taking that?
So on Monday, I reached out to Will Davis at Horizons Engineering to ask for a proposal for a wetlands delineation. They are working on that proposal right now, so hopefully we will have that soon. They think they can get out there fairly quickly, so hopefully once we have the proposal, Kim can take it to the selectmen and we could move forward. As Emily mentioned, I've been out there a couple of times now. It seems like a quality site land-wise. There is a stream that's obviously sort of bisects the property, sort of separating the back 2/3 from the front third closest to Seamans Road. But with over 20 acres, it seems like there's probably somewhere, with over 20 acres, it seems like there's probably somewhere that the stream would not be an issue for. It's a very pretty property. It looks like there used to be a road through there with some nice stone walls that are in there that seem like it could be an attractive spot. So hopefully we'll have more information.
And it's my understanding, Kim, that the Garveys had said that they would be willing to sell whatever portion we thought we needed. So it's not necessarily that we would take all 20 acres. We might be interested in 2 acres or 3 acres or something like that. Okay.
Actually,
Yeah.
Hi, over here. May I just touch on, I don't know if I touched adequately enough on the location itself. And these are my thoughts, not necessarily what the subcommittee had thought at the time, but being off the main corridor, really not that far outside of town on this one. I know that our location now provides some challenges for us in terms of getting out, so we would be still on Seamans Road. While we wouldn't be right on Main Street if we continue to look at this property, I still think that it's a very feasible option. And again, just to bring everyone back to the idea that the police officers are not waiting at the station for calls. They're out and about all throughout the town. So I think it's a feasible option for the police department to be located into the future if it were to go and further be explored.
Any questions or comments from folks on the Garvey property? Phil, any questions or comments from you? I'm looking around here. screen.
I think Jeff has it actually.
Do we have any idea what they might be asking?
Kim's shaking her head no, so no indication, I think, as we sort of move to the next topic here, which is the plan forward, it sounds like this is an interesting property for us to continue to explore, and I would imagine, and Kim, keep me honest here, as we continue conversations with Beltronics and with the wetlands piece, that we might also continue the conversation with the Garveys to say, yes, we actually are interested in continuing the conversations in getting some numbers from them, but it's also interesting, Kim, that they said it's not being donated, but it also likely be within the realm of something we could afford.
Actually, so we got a few questions.
Yeah.
So property looks great, 20 acres is more than enough. So when we did our study, I think the minimum acreage was about 3 acres, that's buildable acreage. So that's a starting point. Then obviously we want to have more road frontage than less so that we can get that 2 means of egress. So when you're in the negotiation stages, you want to kind of keep those in mind.
Right. Is there enough road frontage, do we think, to put? It was like, what did you say, 700?
If it's 20 acres, then it's got to be at least 300 or 400 feet wide, I would say at a minimum, but that's only an assumption.
Measure it.
691.
Yes.
When you guys were walking the property, I haven't walked in, I think, this weekend, but was there any grading issues or changes in elevation?
Not much, but I'm no expert. Adam would be.
I mean, it's certainly not an entirely flat piece of land. We didn't do the entire 20 acres, but it's, I would say, relatively flat. Obviously, the slope of Seamans Road, it slopes down. It's a little bit higher than Seamans Road, so it gets a little bit flatter when you get to the top of the bank. But I would say it's a gentle slope to these. And then to the road frontage question, I think some of that is also dependent on how much land we want to buy and what that leaves for land in the back to make sure that we don't create a landlocked lot, whether that looks like the extension of a small town street to access backland, or whether it looks like the backland having road frontage down to Seamans Road. If it gets to the subdivision point, we have the flexibility to figure that out and work with it so that we make sure that there's, proper access.
Susan, yeah. Yep.
Good morning. I have a question. I did drive by, I didn't walk it. It's beautiful, to say the least. It's lovely. And you can visualize the police station there. But I wondered, and maybe you said this, has the college been approached and they're not interested in that property?
It's my understanding that the Cleveland Garveys aren't necessarily looking to sell, but have said if the town is interested, they would be open to a conversation about selling some of this to us.
Right, I just wondered though about the college, since it does a lot to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought that should be taken into consideration.
Yeah, I think as conversations continue with them, I'm sure that will either come up naturally or.
One small thing on the grading, again, I'm not tech engineer or anything, but I guess would ask you this. It doesn't seem as severe grade to me as like the Bonanno property, the Main Street property, by any stretch.
Correct.
Okay, just to give folks an idea, it's not as severe as that one.
Right. And obviously there's different characteristics over the wider portion of the land where you get close to the stream bed does drop down in that area. However, also not an engineer, but the way it drops down to me lends itself to spanning the stream with a bridge if need be, versus having to do a wetlands crossing at grade, which obviously you get into more actual impacts to the wetlands and the stream than versus if you can just keep the bridge to the high sides that are outside of the stream and the bridge and just go over it without impacting. So in those scenarios, I think the grade actually perhaps works to the advantage.
Yeah, this, I think Tony had his hand up there, but,
Oh,
we're just looking at the width of, Newport Road is about 600 feet, but wide frontage, but there's different geometry there than here, because when you look at how the driveway looks set, you don't need that whole width. If you guys want to have us explore it, we'll have our engineers look at the LiDAR information, look at whatever's available on the site from the state. They have about 5 different resources, I think, or 6 resources to look at. We can look at that, but I think I agree with John that historically, if the site's reasonably buildable, 3 acres would suffice. And if the frontage is, what did you say it was it?
Just shy of 700.
Yeah, so we probably have a frontage of under 450. This, again, nobody hold us to this because they haven't done anything yet, but it's probably doable, right, John? About 450 feet or something would leave plenty of room to try to put a road back there or do something else. We'll have to take a look at it.
Lieutenant Keith had a question. Oh, and then Tony, Phil, I do see your hand up, but Lieutenant Keith's going to speak and then we'll sort of begin.
Visible. So if somebody itself.
Sorry, Ashley, were you calling on me? I couldn't understand what you were saying.
Lieutenant Keith is asking a question right now, and then it's pretty.
You're up next, Phil.
Sorry, so the only thing I would add, I think this is a much better site in terms of staying
Sorry, Keith.
central to town. But I would add that the college already seems to have great difficulty moving grown adults across Seamans Road to the point where they station security officers or police officers out there occasionally. Somebody's going to want sidewalks, somebody's going to want traffic control, and potentially somebody's going to want to run the water main down there. So all of that should be included and thought about. I have no idea where sewers come and go. And whether they're serviced there, but all of that goes into the mix on this site.
Agreed, Phil. If you can hear us. Lieutenant Keith, if you want to speak.
Sure, so I just wanted to clarify that there's visible property boundary markers roadside, so if myself or members of the public want to walk this, they'll be able to clearly see the boundaries.
There are boundary corner pins, they're clear in the relative sense. I mean, they're concrete bounds. So this time of year when all the leaves have dropped, it can be a little challenging. You are at an advantage where your active 911 app, if you turn on the parcel layer, Kim and I were able to find it super easily. It was very accurate. So if anyone does go out there, you can see, sorry, wrong mouse running to computers. Hold on.
While Adam's doing that, do we have, are the parties okay with us having folks walk the property? Members of the public?
I think we can confirm that,
Okay.
but
Yep.
So you can see here, there's a visible stone wall. You can sort of see in the in here, that's about a third of the way down from the boundary with Colby Sawyer. So that I would say is a good way of knowing you are on the site at that point. And then if you head back up the hill, it's at about 160 feet, the corner pin is right there. And it's at the top of the bank above the ditch line. The lower corner pin, harder to see, but as long as you can find one and you have about 700 feet from there, I think that gives you a pretty good idea.
Adam, that would be a great delineation to separate the property where that stone wall and the 100 feet would be an easement to get to the back property, and then the remaining would be the portion of the town. That should give you plenty of road frontage.
Did Ashley or Emily already share my sketch with you? Because
Yeah, I mean, if you give it plenty of room, like John said, to do easement for water line, sidewalk, street. I would just say that people keep mentioning traffic signaling for the police facility. see that even in large cities, because the patrol and dispatching like a fire station, you know, so the traffic can impact us to be very light facility. So traffic signals, as John will tell you, are very expensive to put in, and we generally don't do them. So just for the record.
One thing I would add is that, you know, the quality of the mature trees here is very strong. So I think, you know, being able to retain those for a buffer from Seamans Road could be very helpful. You know, you wouldn't have to start from scratch with little trees that none of us will ever see reach their maturity. So I think that that's a worthwhile advantage too.
Any other questions? Tony, did you have your hand up at one point, or are you good?
No, it's pretty much been covered, so keep on going.
Great. All right, so plan forward. I've had I added a few bullet points here before we get into those. Bill and I did connect last night. And I had asked him if there was any additional funding that we might be able to put to this to have Bob and John actually do the same work that they did for Newport and the Main Street property, the Bonanno property, in plotting a 1 and 2 story building and adding it to that budget sheet that Toby has showed us multiple times. It does, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, it does sound like that is a possibility. We do have some funding that we can put towards that, and it sounds like John and Bob are willing to do that, which we are grateful for. So it sounds like that is definitely going to be a next step forward. And then just in terms of logistics for us, I think what we'll probably do is give some time for John and Bob and the wetlands and any additional information from Beltronics on the towers to sort of come together. We'll then meet to review those, similar to what we did with 0 Newport Road and Main Street properties. We'll take a vote, see what we think, both on the 1 and 2 story and then location. We'll go to a select board meeting at some point after that. I think November 21st is probably the one we'd like to try to get to make a formal recommendation, if we have one. And then the community forum is, or the community gathering is December 13th. And what I had said to Bill last night is I still think we will be able to do a presentation. I have no reason to think otherwise. I think the content of that might change just depending on timing here of, you know, it could be instead of this is our recommendation and here's how we got here. If we're not ready for that, then it might be here's where we are in the process. Here's our timeline, but I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to make a presentation at that meeting. Thoughts, comments from folks? That sound good? All right, we've got a lot of work ahead, but I am confident. I think folks are motivated for this, and I'm certainly excited about this as a potential opportunity, potential location for the police station. So we'll get moving on that. If there aren't any other questions from our committee members, and I will open it up to our community members that are here. Tony, anything from you?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Community members, yeah, Colin, come on up. I think there is right next to Charlene. So we have Colin Beasley speaking.
This report that was sent out with the agenda, there wasn't a link on the agenda, so I wasn't able to watch it. Is that something that?
Yeah, it's quite large, so I actually had to put it on my personal Google Drive, but I have sent Kim the link. I think they're going to download it at the town offices and get it onto the website today.
Am I correct that this is the final report?
Yes, it is the final report of the space and facility needs. So it's everything that we have seen thus far put into one single. Let John and Bob.
So it's a draft report, so we're looking.
It's a draft final, okay.
We're looking for the chief to provide some comments on the executive summary.
Okay.
Majority of the information has been already completed. So a portion of it is the program, which we've already looked at. Another portion is the block plans, the space plans, renderings, all that stuff. So the back end, we've all shared that with you. There's also the existing additions assessment that's been shared to the town as well. So there's a small portion of the report that's new.
Yeah, it's really the executive summary, you know, we can redesign and reprogram. Executive summary, and then I think the chief was free. So it might change if we look at this Garvey site, you might wanna include it in.
Okay.
It's up to you, but we're looking for a comment from the chief and on the executive summary.
Great.
Like John says.
So it doesn't include budget.
Yeah.
That's Tony's part. So we provided the part that we were supplying. Tony's gonna be providing the budget. So yes, that would be part of the total.
And that will update with Garvey.
In all the issues that have been talked about, site.
Correct. I would assume that it would take into account the things we talked about today. Yeah.
And that we expect to be done before committee votes on something.
Yes, absolutely.
Can I ask a couple more questions? This is for LBA and Colliers. I'm just curious, I'm really thinking about vocation and community. What do you advise your clients who are living in suburban and urban territories? Don't have the land that rural agricultural territories have with respect to security and safety. They can't just pack up and move their building to a location that has clearances, setbacks, and those sort of things. What do you advise them? How do you deal with security and safety in urban, suburban territories?
I mean, Tony, I can answer some of that if you're gonna chime in. I want to make sure I understand your question. Your question is, how do we advise urban and suburban versus more rural clients?
Correct. The rural territories have the opportunity, as one does, to take a look. And it has a lot of space, you can have setbacks, you can do lots of things, because you have lots of land. When you go to the urban and suburban territory, whose population is significant and its land availability is low, how do you advise them with respect to safety and security?
I think that, when you're dealing with, you know, a larger piece of property, like the one on Newport, or the spots the Garvey site, or others like Main Street even, you have the opportunity to provide setbacks for security and safety, which lessens the impact on the building structure and the building envelope for being, you know, more hardened. If you're doing this in, well, first of all, in an urban situation, it's a complex question to ask. In an urban situation, you may have a lot of other threats on a more regular basis than you would in a rural setting. That's number one, okay? But if you don't have as much property, you have to take more physical measures that make an impact on the building costs, such as hardening the envelope extensively, making almost all fenestration potentially ballistic resistant, providing additional fencing gates, vehicle attack deterrents. Those all add up. And then if you have to go vertical, that's got its own costs associated with it. But they're very different things. But security wise, that's some of the things you might do in an urban setting. Space. It also may be more fencing, more gating, things like that. I don't know, Tony, if you may have anything to add, but.
No, I mean, really, that's the difference. It's the physical characteristics. It's, you know, if you've got enough land to push the building back, then we're not putting bollards out on the sidewalk. You know, our typical sidewalk light fixtures would then be cement foundations able to take the impact of a vehicle trying to jump the curb and hit the building. The ballistic rating on windows, you know, maybe carry along the entire front side of the building facing, you know, the danger point. All of those physical measures go into more urban, you know, or suburban, you know, cityscape, but they fit better. You know, you're used to walking along a city street. There's more sidewalk, there's more curbs than in the more rural setting.
Okay, thank you. When is the committee gonna vote, for if they vote for a recommendation?
Yeah, so that's what we were, as I was mentioning right before, we opened up for public comment, is I think with our timing, where I hope our timing will be, is we need to let some folks get a little bit of work done, so we have something to review. I'm hoping in the next week and a half, 2 weeks, we'll be able to reconvene. I'll probably send out another email similar to last time to get some availability from folks, and then our hope, Colin, is that we'd be able to make a formal recommendation to the select board on the November 21st meeting. I think that's the date. That's the goal. If that changes, we'll obviously let everybody know. I feel pretty confident that timeline will work, but we'll see how things play out in the next week and a half, 2 weeks or so.
Okay, I just have, if you can develop just a comment. Obviously everyone knows my bias, so. I would ask the committee when they consider a recommendation to do so within a broader context. As in my view, there's no capital investment of this size should be made in isolation. Consider things that I think the things that you might want to consider is take a look at recent work, the select board tax rate for the town portion, the taxes in the forthcoming fiscal year. Consider the recent work by the select board on the next fiscal year's budget and the growth of that budget. Recognizing there's a lot of work to be done in that regard, don't get me wrong, I understand that. But its growth is not insignificant. And consider on top of that what the capital investment would be to the tax rate for this investment. Not even including the other items that are important to the community. So I would ask that you not consider this by itself, consider it in light of what you're going to be asking in your recommendation, community to incur going forward basis for taxes. I think it's a variable that you should consider in your recommendation. And I still am a little bit concerned. It is what it is, I guess, but for the record, I really have not had conversations with leaders. I've not talked about leaders one.
I actually, Colin, I think I can respond to this, but I think the work that we've done over the past few months with LBA and Tony on the space planning, that actually does cover the needs versus wants. But the space that we're in right now doesn't necessarily match what the needs are. That's not, in my opinion, that is not looking at the nice to haves. That's really the space that they are in right now does not fit the needs of the town.
But I don't think there's been a conversation, and we could agree. I don't think there's been a conversation about whether the proposal is need. And I'll give you two examples. One would be community. There's lots of community space, and the chief has indicated in the past that one of the values of having a community room is for some of the training that is conducted. There's a benefit from us. It's a charge that we don't incur. We get a couple of free people in that training, state-of training. It's a pretty significant space, and there's plenty of space. Here's one. It's one of the fire department. There's different spaces. There has not been a conversation about whether the community is another community, whether the police officers can use other community rooms for their purposes twice a year. Second example is the dispatch center. The proposal is 2.5 times greater than the current dispatch center, which was grown recently. And that infers that there's going to be a growth in the number of towns served by dispatch. And financial forecasts would suggest that the number of towns may actually decline. We may have to go through the details with anybody who wants it. But we've reduced the number of towns served by dispatch by, I can't remember off the top of my head, but we used to serve more than we serve now. And we're talking about 1,000 square feet, which is a 10th more of the size of the building, maybe it's a little less than 10. And there has not been a lot of conversation. And granted, I know that was taken off the table by the select board, because it's a select board decision to be a dispatch. I'm not challenging whether we dispatch, but I'm challenging is the conversation on how big is that space and do we need it? And if they need it for growth, you need it now. And those things contribute to the cost of the equation. So if you talk through each of the spaces not relative to the existing space, relative to the need now versus the need in the future. You know, how you build the building, how you can perhaps build the building in a way where you can meet future needs by future growth. Deal with that future cost in the future if you need it, versus building future growth now and incurring the cost today. Just things we didn't discuss. But again, we can agree to disagree, but I just wanted to put those things on the table. You can just settle those. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Anything from our select board members that are here? Nothing? Okay. I think we are done for today. I will keep everybody updated as conversations continue to happen on the Seamans Road property, the Garvey land. And we'll send out an email. Chief Cobb does have a question.
Is it fair to assume that the committee will meet on November 15th? So that, I just want to keep.
Yeah, I think so. I think what I'll probably do is send an email out to people and just see what dates are available. I know that we're getting in close to holiday season here. And we'll just send an email out. I think that week, towards the end of that week, probably makes the most sense. But let's get some availabilities from folks and make sure that that works. And then we'll make sure that that aligns with the work that's being done. Yes, Lieutenant Keither. Yes, absolutely. I think Kim will take that. Yep.
And I'll add to the walk that, you know, if there's anybody who wants me to go with them, I'm happy to try to make that work. If there's a lot of people that want to go, if we could maybe do small group coordinated, but less than a quorum, that would be happy to do that.
Great. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the day's weather. I think this is the last of it. So take care.
Bye, all.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Phil, for joining. Enjoy your